18th December 1796. Courageux of 74 guns was first launched at Brest in October 1753 using a new design of heavier, stouter 74-gun ship that would go on to be the workhorse design of 74-gun warships for the next 50 years. 8 years later, in 1761, under the command of Captain de Gault-Lambert, she was returning from Santo Domingo on August 14th when, off Vigo, she fell in with the HMS Bellona, 74 guns, captained by Robert Falkner, and after a short fight was taken by the British. She would go on to be purchased into the Royal Navy at a cost close to that of £10,000. Courageux was an important prize to the Royal Navy, representing one of the bigger modern French 74-gun ships of the line. The British were keen to understand and copy the design elements for themselves, and thus rather than sending her back to active service, the Courageux was sent to the Portsmouth dockyard, where she was rebuilt and refurbished over a 14-year span, where she was used as a blueprint and guide to the British Navy architects of the time. In 1776, she was recommissioned on active service once more, as concerns that the French, sniffing blood in the water with their old adversaries distracted on the other side of the Atlantic, would try their hands again. In 1778 and 1781, under Admiral Keppel with the Mediterranean fleet, she took part in the first and second battles of the Ushant against the French fleets, under the command of Captain John Phillips, soon to be the second Baron of Mulgrave. Although then 25 years old, her place in the line gives a sense of the old ship's importance. She served in the center squadron of the fleet alongside Thunderer, 74 guns, Captain the Honorable Robert Boyle, Sandwich, 90 guns, a three-decker under Captain Richard Edwards, Valiant, 74 guns, Captain the Honorable John Levy Gower, Victory, three-decker of 100 guns, Captain Jonathan Falkner, Admiral Keppel's flagship, Foudront, 80 guns, Captain John Jervis, Prince George, 98-gun three-decker under Captain Sir John Lindsay, and finally, Terrible, 74 guns, Captain Sir Richard Bickerton, 1st Baronet Bickerton. In 1783, she was paid off once more to Portsmouth before undergoing what was called a great repair, which took 2 years from 1787 to 1789 and cost £30,000 to make the Courageux fit for active fleet duty once more, at which point the Navy still considered her too old for active service and she was held in reserve. This lasted for 4 years until 1793, when the outbreak of war with France necessitated the Royal Navy to once more sweep the harbors of England for any ships that could be sent to sea again to blockade the fleets of France, where Courageux was commissioned back into active service and sent to join the Mediterranean fleet. In December of 1796, Captain Benjamin Halliwell, who had been in command of the ship for 18 months, had put her into Gibraltar Harbor with the fleet to refurbish and take on stores. On the evening of December 9th, Captain Halliwell was not on board, for he was sitting at a court-martial held aboard another warship in the harbor. Several of his officers were also not on board, as they were on shore taking leave of the evening, in consequence of which the watch of the deck that night was entrusted to a young midshipman, while the command of the Courageux devolved upon the second lieutenant John Barrows and the remainder of the junior and petty officers of the crew. During that night, a levanter, known as a violent easterly wind blowing hard over the rock towards the Atlantic and the coast of Algiers, accompanied by violent rain squalls and heavy fog, sprang up. This caused the Courageux to pull her anchors across from Gibraltar until nearly under the guns of the Spanish battery on the northwest side of the bay. The next morning, seeing their predicament, the crew got the ship under way in an attempt to work her into a safe anchorage, but the wind increasingly against them, and scared to anchor once more in case they were once more dragged west, Lieutenant Barrows maintained sail and made for more open waters. That evening, the levanter blew with increased force, and Courageux struggled to sail far enough to windward to get back to Gibraltar, and found herself battling back and forth to try and gain to the west. The weather became thick and hazy, accompanied by incessant rain with thunder and lightning, and for 8 long days the Courageux was at the mercy of the wind, and was eventually caused them to stand too far to the south. The Courageux unknowingly found herself under the lee of current day's Mount Hocho, known as the second pillar of Hercules in the ancient world alongside the Rock of Gibraltar, an unforgiving coast known for its tall rocky cliffs. At 9 p.m. on December 18th, the ship was discovered to be amongst the breakers before the land was even seen. An attempt was made to wear the ship, but the decision was futile, and the Courageux struck and fell broadside on to a precipitous shoreline close to the base in Mount Hojo. Many seamen jumped overboard and attempted to swim ashore, but were lost between the side of the ship and the rocks below. 5 men of a possible capacity of 30 put off in the launch that was being towed astern and made their escape, making their way back to Gibraltar several days later. A desperate struggle was then ongoing between the survivors of the crew, attempting to make it ashore before the rocks and sea broke up what was left of the Courageux. Those of the crew who successfully effected their escape did so by passing along the fallen mainmast to the rugged shoreline and climbing the rocky cliffs in the darkness. The rest were lost to the sea, and rocks around the wreck were swept away and drowned. The survivors were quickly captured by the Moors, living for the first 6 days close to the Courageux in miserable living conditions, before being marched for another 6 days to be exchanged and returned to Gibraltar. Of the 593 officers, men, and boys who had fought the old ship against the weather for 9 long days, 464 souls, including Second Lieutenant Barrows, perished with the wreck.